God of War is a beloved video game series, which is known for many different aspects, such as amazing storytelling, jaw-dropping sceneries, and of course, epic and brutal combat. But there is also another attribute of the God of War series that is a staple, and that is the weapons. And for this video, for your enjoyment, I am not going to be alone. To help me out with this video and to make sure that you all have the best experience possible, I have asked the Midgard Chronicler to help me out in this video. What's going on, dude?
Yes, hello, glad to be here, Shane. Thanks for inserting these clips I made into your video.
And before we begin, hit the like and subscribe button just like you're smashing in Baldur's face.
Get in on this! Get in on this!
Mjolnir, Thors Hammer. So we're starting off this video with the most obvious choice for a weapon that we want to see in God of War Ragnarok, and probably the weapon that we all want to yield the most. So Mjolnir, aka Thors Hammer, is probably the most speculated and wanted weapon to get our hands on in God of War Ragnarok, and has been teased many times between the ending of God of War 2018 and also the God of War Ragnarok trailer. And let's just be honest, I want to get my hands on Thor's hammer too and probably smash his face in with it. So in the God of War universe, Thor gets his hammer from our two favorite pair of dwarves, Brock and Sindri. And then after, chaos reigned throughout the realms, especially in Midgard. And just a little side note, Brock actually died while creating Mjolnir, so kind of a whole nother story all by itself. So will we see Mjolnir in God of War Ragnarok? In my personal opinion, we for sure are going to get our hands on Mjolnir in God of War Ragnarok. But of course, at this time is complete speculation. But how many times have this weapon been teased for God of War Ragnarok so far? I mean, a ton of times, even from the collectors and Jotunar's edition for the God of War Ragnarok boxes. In my opinion, this is going to be a for sure weapon, but it's also an opinion. Gungnir, Odin Spear.
Arguably, the second most well-known Norse mythology weapon, right behind Mjolnir, is Odin Spear Gungnir. It was forged by the Sons of Ivaldi and designed to never miss a target. Throughout God of War 2018, we see Gungnir being held by the Allfather in virtually every image of him in the game, so it would honestly be shocking if we don't see Odin with it in God of War Ragnarok. As to whether we will use it, it's hard to tell as there is so much mystery about Odin and his ultimate fate, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get to hold Gungnir at least, or use it for a short segment of the game or a cinematic. That's kind of it. I don't have much else to say about it. It's a spear.
The Blade of Artemis. So going all the way back to God of War 1, back in 2005, Kratos was given a gift from the goddess Artemis called the Blade of Artemis. Go figure. Kratos receives this blade right after he enters Pandora's temple, and it kinda disappears from the series after this game, except for a return in the game God of War Betrayal. It is perfectly possible that Artemis received back her blade after Kratos became the God of War and his defeat of Ares. But once again, this is just speculation. Now, keeping all of this in mind, there is a very popular theory going around that someone from the Greek pantheon, especially Artemis being the goddess of the hunt and the best person to actually hunt down Kratos in the Norse realm, may make an appearance in God of War Ragnarok. This is not confirmed by any stretch of the mean, but with the tease that we may go back to Greece, especially from the tier mural that you see right here, we may come up against a Greek god or goddess in God of War Ragnarok. So if we do see Artemis and she is the one that we do face back in Greece, or even in the Norse realm, will she still have her infamous blade? And also, could we add this weapon back to our arsenal? We just gotta wait and see until God of War Ragnarok hits shelves. Tyrfing, Tyr's sword.
The next weapon on the list is the sword Tyrfing. Now, this one is confusing because it has two completely different owners and origins. The first one is the obvious one where it's Tyr's sword, as you'd expect, and it was made by the Sons of Ivaldi, and the other one is barely related to Norse mythology at all and deals with a guy named Svafur Lami for the purpose of this video, I'm going to ignore that second one and focus on Tyr. Now, it's not immediately obvious that Tyr will use his sword or even fight at all, given his extremely humane nature, but given Ragnarok and everything, I'd be surprised if Tyr doesn't help whatsoever. Now, back to the sword. Will we use it? I don't think Kratos will. However, Tyr being the man on the mural is a very popular theory, and if Tyr does die, I think Atreus picking up the sword to continue the fight for peace and continuing the legacy of good gods would be quite poetic. Also, according to that second story, the sword is like indestructible and can destroy pretty much anything. That sounds really OP and boring, so I doubt it'll be a thing. And if Atreus does pick it up, it's gonna be more for symbolic reasons rather than for its powers or something like that.
Freyr's sword. Alright, so now whether you call this sword just Freyr's sword or Sumarbrundr, it is one hell of a cool piece of weaponry. This sword has the magical capabilities to fight enemies by itself. Now, can you imagine using this sword in God of War Ragnarok? I mean, I can, and it'd be friggin' awesome. But in Norse mythology, Freyr does not have this sword forever. In Norse mythology, Freyr falls in love with a Jotun named Gurthur, and he asks his assistant, or sidekick, or whatever you want to call him, Skirnir, to go ask her for her hand in marriage. And after several refusals, she finally agrees. And for Skirnir's persistence and his loyalty, Freyr gifts him his sword. Even though Freyr doesn't have his sword anymore, he is actually still known as a great warrior. And we see this from the sagas where he fights off the Jotun belly with just an antler. But because he no longer has his sword, he will die to the fire giant Surt during Ragnarok, which many have speculated that Freyr's sword and Surt's sword are one and the same. But here is a really cool theory that I actually heard from the Midgard Chronicler. So the theory states that Freya's sword that we see in God of War 2018 is actually Freyr's sword. But why doesn't she use it? It is because of the spell that Odin casts on her, so she can't even protect herself or others, so she wouldn't be able to use the abilities of the sword. So will we see the sword in God of War Ragnarok? Maybe we'll get it from Freya or Freyr himself. We just kind of have to wait and see at this point. Hofud, Heimdall's sword.
Hofud, not to be confused with Whole Foods, is Heimdall's sword. Yes, a lot of swords in this one. What's special about it? Well, nothing. Except it's the sword that kills Loki at Ragnarok in Norse mythology, so that's significant. Other than that, it seems like a pretty regular sword, so yeah. Will we use it in the game? Honestly, I doubt it. Considering all the other aforementioned swords on this list, this one would be somewhat meaningless. That being said, we can definitely expect Heimdall to wield his sword and fight us with it. Very unlikely he will kill Loki with it though. To be honest, Heimdall's Fjallarhorn is much more interesting than his sword, and guess what? You can watch the second part of this collaboration right now on it, and the other artifacts we may see in God of War Ragnarok on my channel. That's right, I'm sabotaging this outro. Go watch the other video. Shane's also in it, and we talk about fun stuff, and subscribe to him too, of course. It's his channel, it's great. Please watch it. Please? Okay, I am assuming you clicked now, so I'm gonna stop talking. You clicked, right? I'm just talking to myself now, right? Alright.